Well, hello there, all you amazing people. Today we're going to have a little bit of fun. Again, we love having fun here. It's basically one of the, I'm not saying, maybe close to one of the oldest meme in tech, or at least a really old meme in tech. And that is the year of the Linux desktop. And you may be thinking, why is it a meme and what's going on here? Nerds. Let me tell you about nerds. The year of the Linux desktop is the year that Linux is kind of taking over the world or becoming a massive prominent force in the desktop market. And you may have heard the word Linux before, because most people kind of heard it somewhat, or from someone, or heard a nerd ranting about Linux, or nerding out about Linux, or getting a bone about Linux and stuff like that. But Linux is basically just an alternative to Windows and Mac OS. Mac OS is an alternative to Windows. Linux is just an alternative to Mac OS that, well, you know the limitations of Mac OS when it comes to software and hardware. That's what Linux is, just more limitation with software and hardware than Mac OS and Windows. So you can't get a lot of the same software as you can on Mac OS and Windows. You can't get a full-blown features from your peripherals in a lot of instances as you can on Mac OS and Windows, and a lot of hardware don't have the latest technologies enabled to them as you have under Windows and Mac OS. So a good example here is that Windows have had HDR since 2012. Linux still don't have HDR. And they still think about the year of the Linux desktop. So now we kind of have an idea about what it is. I kind of say this to people, jokingly to piss off Linux people, is that think about Windows as America capitalism, and think about Linux as Russia communism. And I just do that to piss off Linux people, because they're going mental down the comment section right now. So what does the year of the Linux desktop mean? What is this, the year of the Linux desktop? All of these memes we see over here. Like I said, it's basically where Linux become either a prominent force in the market, or as it was back in the 90s when this started out, when I was starting to use Linux. Original thing about Linux, the Linux desktop, year of the Linux desktop, was the year Linux took over Microsoft Windows as being the most used operating system. It basically dethroned Windows and Mac OS. That was the year of the Linux desktop. But 20 plus years later, and nothing has really happened. Still 3% of the market. They kind of morphed into the year that we can use most peripherals, the year we can use most hardware. It's kind of, the message has kind of morphed a little bit, and now every year is the year of the Linux desktop. So the first real evidence of it was like in 1997 or 8 thereabouts, that people start to recognize or talk about the Linux desktop. I feel I've heard it way before, but let's go with that. If you're believing the good old Reddit here, some said here that it came from 1998 because, and this is actually not wrong. It was 1998, investors started throwing money at everything with the word Linux in the name, and software shelf at every store was charmed with boxes, copies of several Linux distributions. Yes, in the 90s and early 2000s, you could go into a store and buy a boxed version of Linux. So that's kind of where it started. And like I said, the original sin, or the original message was that they believed, and still to this day, believe that Linux is going to take over the Windows desktop. So why is it funny and why is it a meme? I think you kind of know this. It's funny and a meme because the amazing hardcore Linux people have not given up on this. They are so delusional and crazy in their quest to justify the year of the Linux desktop that they are starting to grasp at every straw where they just have like a minute little, notch in positivity, and use that as an example of year of the Linux desktop. So when you talk to new Linux users that has only been using Linux for 3 or 4 years, even 10 years, their definition of the year of the Linux desktop is vastly different from mine, because I've been using Linux almost since it came out in 1992. It was about 1996 I started using it. So I started to listen to people talking about Linux back then. So why is the message not the same? And this is kind of why it's the meme. Because it is probably never going to happen. It's like dreaming about unicorns and rainbows flying over your bed and shitting tons of gold and money down on your floor, and then when you wake up, you're the richest person in the world. It's kind of this delusional belief in that if only people knew how great Linux was, it would take over the world. It's like, I correlate this a lot with flat earthers, you know. The Linux community, or a big part of it, is so headstrong in the year of the Linux desktop that every year the Linux desktop, again for various fucking weird reasons and stuff like that, and they make all kind of excuses. While if you take from 1992 when Linux came out and up till to this day here, Linux desktop, not servers, Chromebooks and Android and all that shit, the Linux desktop is under 3% of the market. So that's over 30 years Linux has grown. Not even 3%. That is a really, really slow growth on the desktop. Granted, to satisfy the crazy batshit mental Linux users, yes, Linux is massively on the server market. Linux is great on, dominating the IoT market and so on, but it's not dominating the desktop. That's why this is a meme. That all of the advantages with Linux, where Linux is really taking off, is industry products. Yeah, you know what? The desktop is not doing that well, so let's grasp at straws that says Android must be Linux because it has Linux code in it. While, and this is the funny part, while they are bitching and moaning at Microsoft Windows doing a lot of anti-consumer stuff, that this device is also doing way worse than Microsoft and Windows. But because it has Linux code in it, it's the Linux desktop, and therefore Linux is doing massively great. That's the kind of delusion. Again, you kind of get why I'm saying Linux people are flat earthers or vegans, because they are saying the same fucking shit. They are they are trying to convince themselves about something that's not a reality. And that is why the year of the Linux desktop is a meme. It's because it's something that the community keep talking their asses out of, that it's coming, it has been, it will be, because they really, really want it so much that they cannot or won't take real data in and say, oh, this is actually the data that we have. If 3% of the desktop market is the year of the Linux desktop, what the fuck is macOS then? What the fuck is Linux or Windows then? Is that the mega year of those desktops or something like that? And then you say, oh well, Microsoft is losing user base and Linux is going up just a little bit and macOS is going up a little bit more. So therefore that must mean that Microsoft is going out of the way and crashing and burning. No, that's normal. Microsoft always do like this over the years. They do some bad press, people, and then like they come back like a month or 2 months later or a year later and it goes up again. It's in the year of the Linux desktop, it represents the delusional quest and the blindness and craziness in the Linux community towards Linux as a desktop operating system. It basically stands for everything that's wrong with Linux on the desktop. Toxicity among the users, not compatible with the software people want to run, not giving you full-blown features for your peripherals that you buy. Like this headset can play sounds under Linux, but it also have LEDs that I haven't turned on right now because I can see it in my glass and all that shit. But that don't work under Linux. And the same with a lot of peripherals. My webcam don't have all of the features under Linux. Like I said, HDR and all that fucking shit if you're a gamer, but they are trying so hard to convince people that Linux is ready for the desktop, and that's what this stands for. And it's so funny listening to a really hardcore Linux user trying to convince you that Linux is better, and the year of the Linux desktop was last year, or last month, or it's coming next year. And if you are analyzing the history of Linux and the trajectory of Linux and what's going on, it's not going to happen. And now they're throwing in Proton. Oh, you can now game on Linux. Yeah, but if you look at the market share when Proton started to become a thing on Linux and up till now, the only growth that Linux have had was normal Linux growth. That will see that Linux didn't grow faster or less because of the capabilities of gaming on it. It's basically just growing steady, really slowly, with kind of the same rate in the last 30 plus years. You cannot go on a chart and say, aha, I see, Proton got introduced, which is a gaming compatibility layer for Linux, so you can use the Steam games under Linux. If you look at the charts, you cannot pinpoint and say, aha, there is Steam Steam introducing Proton to Linux, and you get a massive bump in Linux users. No, it's just, hey, Proton, and almost nothing happens. But they're crafting at it. Another thing here, again, this is how delusional they are. Stack Overflow do surveys about their developers on, what they are using. And Linux is quite well suited or well liked in the development world. Oh, I didn't find the right one here. My mistake. And you now see that people say, oh, it's way bigger than we think it is, because look here. Yeah, but they are little delusional, crazy Linux users that really want the Linux desktop. You have to understand this word here, developers. So that don't mean servers, that don't mean your mom and dad, that don't mean you sitting and playing Angry Bird on Steam, that don't mean graphic artists, that don't mean publishers, that don't mean accountants, it basically only means developers, which is a not small but not big subgroup of computer users. And around developers, Linux is massively popular, or kind of popular. Still not the biggest, but still popular. Because they really want this here. They use data like this to say, this has already happened. At least for developers. Well, I don't know about you. Are you a developer? If you're not a developer, you don't give a fuck about developers. So you don't give a fuck about this statistic. Is this going to give you better peripheral support? Is that going to give you better, component support? Is that going to give you software that Linux can run? Adobe, Photoshop, AutoCAD, and blah, blah, all of the big name software houses. Is this going to give you that? No. No, because they are not going to use it. They're going to use Visual Studio Code, development environments, which are able to be used under Linux. But this is to the degree that they want to twist reality to convince you that you should be using Linux. You should write that penguin harder than you're fucking writing your spouse this night. Because it's the year of the Linux desktop. And when you've been in the Linux community for over 20 years and every year is the Linux desktop, at some point you cannot stop by stopping and looking at the community and be like, point and laugh at them like a fucking crazy person. Because right now, the year of the Linux desktop is more of a showcase of how delusional and how blind the Linux community is towards reality. I don't mean this in a harsh way. I mean it that they have been kind of conditioned by themselves to believe in the year of the Linux desktop, because they are looking at creators and blog posts saying, oh, look how amazingly Linux is doing. And then they do stuff like this here. Look how great it is. All the other numbers are fake. Look. They just tend to forget about this little thing up here. That's to the degree that they are going to sell you Linux. And then when you start to use Linux and you figure out that it's not the year of the Linux desktop, and, the things that you want to do with Linux you can't do, they're like, oh, no, we have an alternative, boy. Fuck you, man, we have alternative. What's your issue? GIMP is way better than fucking Photoshop. Forget about the fucking, ecosystem around Photoshop with training and certification and all of that fucking shit. Forget about all the companies that you work with that require Photoshop compatibility and stuff. They just have to switch to Linux also, and then everything will be okay, man. The world should be running Linux anyway. What the fuck is your issue? If the software that we have is not compatible with them, they have to change. And then we will really have the year of the Linux desktop. That's how delusional they are. And that is why a lot of users, even Linux users within themselves, are making these kind of memes, because it's a testament to how batshit crazy hardcore Linux users are and how delusional they are towards the year of the Linux desktop. See you all later. Bye bye. Let's laugh at the year of the Linux desktop.